about it.
The question was the same when we made cables and then we invented Wi-Fi. So what are we doing, all the companies making cables? Well, they didn't have the vision or the foresight to understand the cable was a bridge to another technology. And that's the story of most technologies. They are a bridge to another technology. The fundamental thing we need to understand in this AI conversation, the purpose of technology is to relieve you, the human, of chores. And then of work. Work in the sense of menial work to accomplish tasks, not work to create art, not the work to create the Taj Mahal. That is the real work, to create worldliness, to create signs that we existed.
And we're definitely going to dive all the way into work. But with every new technology, especially general purpose technologies, whether it's electricity, the internet, the steam engine, there are winners and there are losers. Which companies that exist today that we use a part of our daily lives do you think are most at risk of being disrupted by artificial intelligence?
Whoa, there's so many. I would say not companies, but fields of human activity which turn around to become organized work for people. The obvious ones are repetitive work. The obvious ones are advising. The obvious ones are, I will even say, consulting. Any kind of advisory role uses the brain of a group of people. But generative AI uses the brain of the entire neural network. You cannot compete with it. And not only you cannot compete, but it does it in a fraction of a second. So now, how many people will be, I don't want to use the word unemployed, because the issue is much deeper than unemployment. The issue is the meaning of life, the meaning of their life, the meaning of their professional life as opposed to what life is about, which is you, not your profession. The difference between the me, the I, the ego, the self, all of those things are getting right now not destroyed, but challenged by the questions AI is posing. I don't want to name a company because I don't want to create a fear.
But the reality is, with every new technology, the companies that were in the top 20 change.
Right.
So the companies that you think you can't live without, at one point eventually become relics of the past, or they adapt but they aren't central.
Right.
And do you believe that that's going to continue, that there's no reason why that line randomly stops?
No, I'll give you an example. One of my books, I had made a list of the top 10 by market capitalization companies in 2000, and then the same list in 2015, completely different names. All the companies in 2000 were either financial services or energy. Of all those companies at the top, banks and so on, none of them exist today in the top 10. The top 10 companies in 2015 were strictly in the behavior economy. Strictly companies who produced very little but gave you space to behave in a way in which you couldn't behave before. So they created what I call behavior spaces. So the iPhone is a behavior space. Some people think it's a product. The people who thought it was a product, I don't want to mention the company that was leading at the time in the market price.
Who didn't make it?
Right. And the company who actually in a meeting of shareholders called the iPhone a toy, it was absolutely right. It is a toy, and that's why it was successful. It was a toy for discovery. It was a magnifying lens to the universe. That was amazing. The BlackBerry was not that. The BlackBerry was just a communication device.
So technically, you could look at the top 10 list right now of the biggest companies in the world, and it is possible that we project 10 years into the future. And if history tells us anything, it's up for debate who will continue to hold those places. There's one thing that you wrote in your book: refusing to engage with the tools of destruction does not make your work more authentic. It makes it less relevant. And so I think for people, that's obvious when it comes to a business. If you don't get on the internet, if you don't pick up the phone, it's over. But there are many artists or individuals who feel, if I'm a writer, I want those words to come from me. But you're saying it's not that it makes you authentic or inauthentic, it actually just makes you irrelevant. How so?
Completely. Look at the history of human communication and human expression of thoughts and feelings, right? We depend on what is available. Wood, water, color, paint. So we start painting, sculpting, we start making tools to express feelings, we start going into a cave to put a drawing on the wall 10 kilometers in. Like, this is stunning, there's no light there. Why did humans want to mark their presence? That's what work is. When you create the history of who you were at the time, and I can see it 10,000 years after. So we used all this technology to express ourselves, and every time we have a new technology, we express ourselves in a deeper, more complex way. and in a more transmittable, culturally transmittable way. The tradition of culture with technology right now is stunning. So now, if I'm an artist and I'm not using the technology most available to me and readily available, am I relevant or am I a relic of the past? I don't want to answer that question because the answer is obvious. If Picasso was alive today, he would have been the first one to embrace Midjourney. And because he embraced everything with a speed that nobody else did. Because artists were always at the forefront of experimenting with technology to actually understand what else can I do with this? What else can I become? And this is the question that's fascinating about AI. What else can I become? Very few people have the courage to ask that question. Why? Because they look in the mirror in the morning and they see an engineer or a doctor. They don't see a person. They see themselves as the self-created through education, to being pushed to do certain things by peer groups, family, and so on. Self-actualization became an obsession for people without people understanding what does self-actualization even mean. You're not actualizing your being, you're actualizing the self society wants of you. Engineer, doctor, professor, and so forth.
Even in the terms of art, if you look at the tools a modern day artist wants to hold on to, at one point, those were radical technologies that people objected to or thought they were a fad. Even I remember reading about the invention of films and movies, and everybody who went to theater thought that it was a fad because it was much more accessible, that it was cheap, and it was a lower art form.
Yeah, it was democratizing expression, therefore it's not art, right? So photography democratized image capture. I don't have to be a painter to capture this image. Now the painters had a choice. Do I continue to paint realistic images, or do I transform my art? And it actually transformed art.
So if paint led to the painter, and instruments led to the musician, camera to the photographer, video camera to the filmmaker, and now the internet to the creator economy, what type of artist will AI invent?
That's fantastic. Fantastic question. So the question is, does the artifact create the master, or the master creates the artifact? In other words, did the piano invent Beethoven, or the piano invented Beethoven? So Beethoven became actualized through the piano. So I think you will have right now a mass of creative people that didn't even know they were creators. There will be a freedom. It will give them an explosion of potential. I can do this. And then when people start actually experimenting with this technology, they stop asking the question, what happens when I don't have a job? Well, you will do this stuff. You will create images of contemplation for other people. Contemplation is what we do and other animals don't.
We're seeing so much AI slop. I mean, if you are to see something was written by AI, it was an AI-generated image, right now, for the most part, it's uninteresting, it's uninspiring. And is that because we're still fitting in what we did with the old technologies into this new frame? So it's when, right now, we're driving cars on roads designed for horses.
Right. We are still creating with AI from our imagination and from its imagination, which means from what we know that exists and from what AI was trained on, images it was trained on. And I think at one point we'll move to another level of creativity, which I named creative generativity, in which we will entrust the art to create, to generate. And that will be a new form of art.
And I think the most unstoppable artist of the future is going to be the artist that finally recognizes their taste
Brian Eno
is no longer confined to their craft. And you write in your book, rather than laboring over the detailed designs for a house, we articulate our ideal dwelling, and a software system translates our desires into architectural blueprints. So does this theoretically mean if a fashion designer or a logo designer who has really great taste could, in an AI world, be the best person to design your home and the architecture for your home, because AI makes the math make sense, and I can take that fashion designer, I can articulate what it is that I want to feel in my home, and then that designer actually becomes the architect.
Sure. Because don't forget what professions are about. They're mechanical translations, essentially. So a lot of professions are forcing people to create things for a machine. Right now, because the machine understands only numbers. Right now, AI can do that faster and much better than anyone. Why much better? It's trained on a wider spectrum of knowledge, so its perception of what exists is huge. And then it will replace a lot of professions which depended on the knowledge from the past and the skills to create a sustainable framework for a house, like a that defies gravity and so on. Well, those are numbers that the machine can do much, much faster. And then the question becomes, so what will the human do? Well, the human will enjoy it.
Or articulate what it could be.
Of course. And then the combination that you mentioned of fashion designer designing a house could lead to an unexpected, something really beautiful, which is transcending your imagination. That's the whole point. The whole point of AI right now is to transcend, and the whole experience you have with images created, it transcends anything you imagined.
And is this what you mean when you say we're moving to a narrated economy? So right now we're in the industrialized economy. The future will be the narrator, not the creator.
The narrator will be the best articulator of the intent. And happens that the narrator was always the best articulator of society. That's how we have Homer, Shakespeare. These guys did what? They narrated, right? They told us a story about something that might have not even existed. We are dependent on this narrator. Like, that's why we talk about the narrative arc of a movie. It is what sustains our interest in that form of art, the narration part. So the creator part is physical, mechanical, skill-based, 3D printing. I don't have to talk to a 3D printer, I have to tell it what to do. Now, the 3D printer might be a collaborator because at one point it might have an opinion, because it might have a memory of what was created before and might tell me you're infringing on somebody's patent. I already created that shit. And that would be a normal thing to expect, just like in music we code music with traceable digital information so we don't break royalty agreements. So the same thing will happen with shapes. Products will be encoded, the ambient will understand each product and what its meaning is. Will be able to tell you don't do this or do this.
So you've stated that our future with AI could become more human and in the products and in the services that we design, because we will be able to have things that are designed for us as individuals. So I don't want to shop online and get that couch. I want to design a couch based on how I feel, what I want, what I'm looking for in my budget, and everything becomes about the individual. So if I'm looking at the future of shopping, if we'll even call it that, the idea that we all surf on the web and look at the same couch will be a relic of the past. Whatever I imagine, that's a product of what I feel, my budget. AI designs that in a custom way. I just articulate it, or maybe my ambient AI systems in my home know it, and the 3D printer brings it to life. So we get a customized future.
Right. I recently worked on the future of marketing in the era of generative AI. And I imagined packaging. So imagine packaging that has absolutely zero design on it, just an empty box. But you are embedded. You're an augmented individual. You have glasses, or you have implants, or you have contact lenses. So when you walk into the store, the packaging becomes what you want it to become. It has the colors that you like. Why? Because the system, the ambient system, knows who you are and what are your biases. It even brands it for you. In other words, the branding becomes hyper-personal. Things will not be called the same thing. Actually, it's absurd if you think about it, to call the same thing for everyone. It can become completely customized to you. How is that possible? It's possible right now. Like the embedded situation exists, glasses exist, and every single company is working on XR glasses. Some declared they're doing it, some are keeping it stealth. But everybody's clearly understanding that this is the future of displays. Well, if the future of displays is here, then the future of packaging is also here.
So if you walk into a store, we will all see different things based on what our intent is or what we're looking for. So for people who believe, but that experience brings us in community, why I don't want to see a different couch than everybody else, that keeps this shared reality, that our reality will become too customized, too individualized. What would you say to that?
Your iPhone doesn't look like my iPhone, and I don't hear anybody complaining. So we customize everything anyway. As soon as we can, we customize. So why should I not customize my life? And then we can exchange lives. I can tell you, this is, hey, look at me. And we have a subject to discuss in that moment. Right now everything is boring. You have the same couch as me.
It's true.
Yeah, I mean, ideally not, but...
It's true, though. Why are we all looking at the exact same furniture when we call ourselves individuals, but we shop in a way that's for the masses?
Yeah, so actually the store is a mass. It's a mass distribution store. So we declare ourselves, I want to be part of the mass. At the same time, we declare, I am completely independent and I have my own system of beliefs. So that's the contradiction the paradox. And that's exactly what will be transformed. We'll become finally individuals. That's what when you mentioned becoming more human, that's what I meant. Allowing your humanity to transcend the form imposed to you by others, and you create essentially your reality, which becomes you. And then we can exchange realities. We can actually have an exhibition of reality, if you will. Now, people that are watching this right now might think this is totally crazy, this is totally out there. No, every single technology allowing the creation of what we're discussing here exists right now. So we're not discussing science fiction, we are discussing what Peter Drucker called what has already happened and has not yet made its full impact.
And this idea of mass consumerism, where we all see the same thing, will just be a chapter in history. And when you think about something like fashion, the whole point of fashion is to express your individual sense. And we always look at history where everybody has their own unique artisan design. In the future, it will be affordable for each of us to just design the thing we want, that nobody else has, and it's an expression of ourselves. That, if anything, is making us closer to ourselves, but we're using a technology to do it.
And it will change society, the structure of society. It will change the whole idea of look at my car, and look at my clothes, and look at my watch. It will change all that because your watch will become irrelevant. My watch is not nicer than yours.
Status symbols, in a world where everything is actually about the individual.
The influencer will be gone.
The idea of the
sadly.
And speak more about that. The influencer is gone in a world with customized individual AI first. Why is the influencer gone? And I don't mean automated gone. I mean, why does an influencer not make sense in the future?
Because the influencer is uniting, it's converging aesthetics and desire to a very specific outcome. And that's exactly the mass outcome. So the influencer influences people to do the exact same thing. And we are advocating right now for the opposite. Technology is allowing you to be you. Now, that's a choice you can make. But the problem with the influencer, they exist because of the numbers that sustain the ecosystem of influencer. If that system collapses, the influencer drops to the earth and becomes him or herself.
Right. So the internet led to the creator economy and the idea of the influencer. AI takes that away.
In a way, yes. Well, the internet is, I'm not connecting it to the internet. The internet will still be a distribution.
But the idea of an influencer makes less sense in a world where AI makes it so we will have everything custom. We will be so individualized and you can afford your whole individual aesthetic.
Well, it's a very simple thing. And actually, if people bother to read Maslow for real, the last
Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah. The last thing, or the so-called hierarchy, which is not a hierarchy, it's not self-actualization, but transcending self. Transcending self is exactly this revolt against what society forced me to become, an engineer, a doctor, and so forth, and transcend that and become a person that cares about others and manifests itself or herself in the world in a way it's not influencing anybody. It's a form of the group, right? So then if you transcend the self, say if you, self-transcendence is the objective here, then clearly the influencer has no role, because the influencer is about the self. The influencer is about creating the self that you are not, and that you are to aspire to be. You are aspiring to be that person, or emulate that person. So that's a creation of self.
I feel like social media may be one of the biggest casualties of AI. And here's why I think that. The entire premise and the entire value proposition of the current platforms is that they connect us to real people, right? Whether that's me signaling to a potential suitor, a job opportunity to my friends and family, we post because other people see, even if it's one person. In a world where we don't know if it is a person on the other end or if we are a human, that entire value proposition breaks. If you're posting for a bunch of large language models, the idea of signaling goes away, and signaling is a psychological phenomenon for millennia. So I think social media doesn't make sense in a world where we can't guarantee it's a human posting or it's a human watching. And then I also think media will still want to connect in some way, but it doesn't make sense that it'll be on the same infrastructure. It's akin to the news stations trying to stay relevant by posting 60-second TikTok clips. Mm-hmm. We will do something different on different platforms. And so I think if the platforms don't evolve, they will be the biggest casualty, even though they are building the tools themselves that will give them a big disruption, or they'll face the innovator's dilemma.
Well, first of all, it will become decentralized. Secondly, it will become a social graph. In other words, we will understand how many people are involved in what activity. So it becomes much more of a real social event, a plurality of people doing this. Right now we don't know. Right now we have no idea who's doing what except the people we are connected with. But when the thing is passive and I can have a graph in my glasses, and I know how many people, or a heat map if you want, and I know how many other people like me are doing this thing at this exact moment. For example, listening to the exact same song, which passively is possible. Then I'm much more connected to that universe of people than I am right now. Right now I have to actively seek it. But if I'm creating a digital footprint and I allow that footprint to be followed by ambiental methods, then I'm part of a much bigger thing. I will feel it in a much bigger way. Because in the end, we are social animals. We depend on this plurality, and the plurality doesn't have to depend on how many people we can connect with. It should connect with how many people are engaged in the same line of or activity or thinking and so on that I am right now.
So in some ways, a social media, if we'll even call it that, it's actually about the people that are doing similar things than us. So if I'm passively listening to a song, a future social media would be, I'm connecting you with other people that are listening to the same song. And it's not even active, it just happens. So we're kind of going back to...
And I can know their names, and I can know where they are, and I can understand in that moment that, hey, I am part of a much bigger thing as I thought I was. And I have friends. I have friends that I didn't even know I had. Because we like Keith Jarrett, and we are listening at this moment to the exact same concerto.
So it actually brings us in community with one another.
Much more, yeah.
And so I think that there is the fear that we're going to be in this doom scroll of AI-generated nonsense, and we'll just look at fake lives. But I think that's just going to be temporary, and social media will evolve to something that looks nothing like today.
Anytime we have a new technology, the first moments are play. In other words, we play, we experiment, we actually call it gizmos, and we tell people I'm playing on my computer or I'm playing on my phone, and then it becomes more serious. Then you start depending on it. Then the thing transforms you. And then you start figuring out, okay, so I'm transformed, but what have I become? And then you start exploring the becoming part. What else can I become? And that's what AI will do.
And so I guess what else can you become is the same way some people became podcasters, or they became creators on a platform called YouTube.
Perfect example.
AI will lead to a new type of thing we can become.
Yeah. Exactly what we didn't know we could become before 2004, which was the Web 2.0. Before Web 2.0, nobody ever thought about becoming a podcaster. The medium didn't exist.
Now everyone in this room is here because of that.
Yeah. And nobody, how many kids of 11 years old thought they would be making $70 million unboxing?
I think that's something we might look back and think we might not be well.
Yeah.
I want to talk about smartphones, but I want to start with a few quotes about the history of the phone.
Mm-hmm.
First quote, 1876, Alexander Graham Bell tries to sell the patent for his telephone to Western Union, which had a thriving telegraph business, and Western Union says, "The idea of a telephone device in every city is idiotic. Why would any person want to use this ungainly and practical device? We do not recommend its purchase. It is of no use to us." 1981, telecommunications consultant Jan David Jubin. "But who today will say, I'm going to ditch the wires in my house and carry a phone around?" And finally, 2007, a scathing piece in TechCrunch called "We Predict the iPhone Will Bomb." That virtual keyboard will be about as useful for tapping out emails and text messages as a rotary phone. What device do you think is in the pipeline today or has yet to be invented that could replace the smartphone that people today will say, "It's ugly, I will never use this, it won't be cheap enough, and nobody will buy this"?
XR glasses. So if you look at Android XR, it's introducing, Warby Parker is making the glasses, so they'll be attractive. They're attractive right now.